Hi guys, this is Dr. Pam, and I just want to remind you that I have a social work boot camp coming up this weekend. I know we have a lot of NCE clients and LPC clients, but Dr. Pam is an LCSW by trade. So I really want to invite you to our boot camp. I'm going to give you an idea of kind of some things that we're going to look at. So most of my clients really focus on content or how to. Many of you have focused on the acronyms, the eat pie, eat cake, safari, whatever. Not a fan of those. All we're going to do is remind you of the social work problem solving method that you learned when you were in school. In your methods class, you learned assess, assess, assess first. Remember, we get paid to be nosy. That's what we do. We get paid to ask the questions that your mama said don't ask. We get paid to ask, how much money do you have in the bank? And is he the father of all of your children? Right? We get paid to be nosy. So I don't need the whole eat cake, pie, whatever. What I need to know is the problem solving method. I need to remember that we assess, assess, assess first. If I can't assess first, there's either an issue with safety or feelings. If the question is full of feelings, it says Dr. Pam is so upset, she's boohooing. We do what we always do. We're going to address the feelings before we talk about any assessment tools. And remember, safety trumps everything. As we go down that chart, remember, we're always going to make sure that we do the treatment plan with the client. We never tell a client what to do, whether it's an individual, a group, a family, or a community. We don't ever tell a client what to do. We just don't do that. Intervention questions are just really making sure we understand your theorist. And remember, termination starts at the beginning. We're going to make sure you understand what that looks like in a question. We're going to talk to you about everything is really a first question, whether it says next or first, or it just says what should social worker do. Those are still really my first questions. We have an excellent passing rate, and we hate when people keep taking the exam over and over and over again. Let me give you a question that many people struggle with. So when using a qualified interpreter to provide services to a client who speaks a different language, a social worker should do all the following except. And what we always teach you is to spend more time in the question than in the answers. So I'm going to go back and read the question 17 times if I need to, because if I understand the question, I can figure out the best answer. So I'm looking for a qualified interpreter to provide services to a client who speaks a different language. I should do all of the following except. So when I see a question like this, I'm looking for the 3 things that I would do and what's the one that I would not do. We're always going to focus on ruling out first. So what 3 things would I do? Let me give you some hints also. So remember, when you're using an interpreter, you're looking at the person directly and the interpreter is beside you. Whether it's language or whether it's someone who's hearing impaired. If you've ever watched the Weather Channel or the news when there's something going on, the interpreter is standing right here. He's next to or near to the people who's speaking, and he's looking at the crowd. So I'm always speaking to the person, whether it's an ESOL or someone who's a non-English speaker or someone who's hearing impaired. So let's look at my 4 choices, or sometimes on the exam there's only 3. Remember that on the new exam? Okay, so I'm going to stand near the interpreter and face the client so the client can clearly see the social worker and interpreter without having to move his or her head. I like that. I said that already, right? I'm going to have them next to me, so I'm looking at the client. I like that. I think I'll keep that one in. B, avoid using slang expressions or abbreviating items that can be difficult to translate. So I'm looking for the 3 things that I would do and the 1 things that I would not do. Okay. C says, ask the interpreter for his or her comments to ensure the information is gathered from collateral contents. I'm going to ask the interpreter what they think. Or D, I'm going to speak clearly with typical tone and volume so the conversation does not appear strained or unnatural. So I'm going to go back and read all 4 again. So the question was, I'm working with an interpreter. I would do 3 of these things, and 1 of the things I would not do. So I'm always going to rule out. So I said that stand the interpreter and face the client so the client can clearly see the social worker and the interpreter. I'm taking that out. I would do that. Definitely I would do that. So A is out. B, avoid using slang and expressions or abbreviation terms that would be difficult to translate. Again, that is something I would do. I would avoid those things, right? I'm going to use slang terms. I'm not going to use terms that the client might not understand. So if you are an English speaker, and if you learned English if you're a non-native English speaker and you learn the British English, you may struggle with American idioms. I have a family member, and I said to them, "Oh my gosh, she's going to have a cow," and he's like, "What does that mean?" That's an American idiom. And if you learned English from a different country, you learned British English, not American idioms. So B, I'm taking out. I would not do that. Okay? Avoid, so I would avoid. So that's something that we would take out. So now between C and D. Ask the interpreter for other comments to ensure that the information is gathered from collateral contacts. Or D, speak slowly and with a typical tone and volume so the conversation does not appear strained or unnatural. I would do D. I would really speak in natural tones. I would speak just as if the client could hear me, or if they understood what I said, because the interpreter is going to interpret what I said while I'm looking at the client. So the one thing I would not do, I would not ask the interpreter for their opinion. Right? They're only there to interpret, and again, we do not want their opinion. We just want them to interpret verbatim. Remember, with our families, especially our Hispanic families, we talk about machismo. Can you imagine if I'm the father and I am the man of the house and you're asking my 10-year-old to translate to me? Not okay. We don't need the janitor. We don't need the custodian. We don't need the secretary. That's not acceptable. For the test, we're going to hire a translator or use the translator hotline. I know many agencies don't do that, but remember, this test is not about what happens in your agency. It's about what's the best thing to do. What does the Code of Ethics say? What is the best practice for social workers? Hope you find this question helpful, and I'd love to see you in my boot camp. It's Friday, 8/23, and remember, we have them about every 6 to 8 weeks, so check us out. If you can't make a boot camp, we've got lots of other opportunities for you to join us.